Good evening, you're watching A News and I'm your host Nadia Jani. Now let's take a look at today's top stories. Tensions in the Middle East escalate, raising fears that the conflict could widen and draw in US ground forces. The European Union calls for the Strait of Hormuz to reopen and urges an end to strikes on energy and water infrastructure. And Ukraine peace talks stall as the war with Iran shifts global attention, though new discussions could resume this weekend. First, a rapidly escalating confrontation is fueling fears of a wider war across the Middle East. Iran has stepped up its attacks. Israel says it has severely weakened Tehran's military capabilities, and the United States could be drawn deeper into the conflict, despite limited public support at home.
Iran stepped up attacks on Gulf energy facilities after Israel struck South Pars, its share of the world's largest gas field co-owned with Qatar, because about 80% of Iran's electricity depends on natural gas. The strike threatens its power supply. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that after 20 days of operations, Iran no longer has the ability to enrich uranium or produce ballistic missiles, adding that Israel is continuing efforts to fully dismantle those capabilities.
We are acting now not only to destroy the ballistic missiles and the remaining nuclear programs, very little remains, but also to destroy the industries that enable the production of these programs. And already now, after 20 days, I can tell you, Iran today has no ability to enrich uranium, and it has no ability to produce ballistic missiles. We are continuing to dismantle these capabilities. We will crush them completely, down to dust.
At the end of the press conference, Benjamin Netanyahu denied dragging the U.S. into the conflict, saying no one can dictate to Donald Trump. Trump said the U.S. needs more funding for the war, with the White House seeking $200 billion to replenish depleted supplies. The Pentagon estimates the conflict cost $11.3 billion in its first week, as it nears its fourth week.
$200 billion, I think that number could move, obviously. It takes money to kill bad guys. So we're going back to Congress and our folks there to ensure that we're properly funded for what's been done, for what we may have to do in the future. Ensure that our ammunition everything's refilled, and not just refilled, but above and beyond.
About 65% of Americans think Donald Trump will send troops into a large ground war in Iran, but only 7% support it, according to a Reuters/Ipsos poll released Thursday. The three-day poll showed Trump's approval rating at 40%, little changed from a previous survey after the February 28th attacks on Iran.
A group of European countries, together with Japan and Canada, is calling on Iran to halt its retaliatory actions in the Strait of Hormuz. In a joint statement, the countries say they are ready to take steps to ensure vessels can pass through the waterway safely. Here's more.
Some European leaders, along with Japan and Canada, have issued a joint statement on the Strait of Hormuz. European countries, including the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy and the Netherlands, condemned recent Iranian attacks on unarmed commercial vessels in the Gulf and called on Tehran to halt threats to the choke point. Traffic in the strait has seen a sharp reduction as the conflict in the Middle East has escalated. This comes as Iran launched retaliatory attacks on vessels it considers linked to its adversaries following a preemptive strike by the United States and Israel. US President Donald Trump had earlier called on NATO allies to join efforts to secure the waters. Although the initial response was marked by hesitation, the joint statement now outlines the country's readiness to contribute to appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through the strait. The statement says Tehran is threatening international peace by disrupting global energy supply chains, after disruption to traffic has caused instability in the energy sector, with oil prices fluctuating sharply. Meanwhile, the Secretary-General of the International Maritime Organization has called for a de-escalation of tensions in the Gulf region, particularly around the Strait of Hormuz. Secretary-General Arsenio Dominguez said at least 7 seafarers have been killed in recent attacks on commercial vessels in the Strait, adding that around 20,000 seafarers remain stranded at sea, facing high risks and significant psychological stress. For the region's oil producers, including Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, the Strait is indispensable, carrying the bulk of their crude exports. It is also a crucial artery for liquefied natural gas, with roughly 20 million barrels of oil passing through it each day, about a fifth of global consumption.
Over to the war in Ukraine, and the Kremlin says negotiations between Washington, Moscow and Kyiv aimed at ending the war in Ukraine are on what is described as a situational pause following the conflict involving Iran. Ukraine's president, however, says new discussions could resume as early as this weekend. Efforts to revive negotiations on Ukraine appear to be losing momentum as the crisis in the Middle East draws global attention. Moscow says the latest developments have pushed talks down the agenda, with focus shifting to tensions involving Iran. Even so, Kyiv says it still expects dialogue to restart soon. President Trump used a meeting with Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi to highlight growing divisions among Western allies over the conflict with Iran. Speaking at the White House, he praised Tokyo's support while criticizing some NATO partners and defending his administration's military approach in the region.
US President Donald Trump hosted Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi at the White House on Thursday, with talks dominated by the escalating conflict with Iran, alliance dynamics and regional security. President Trump praised Tokyo's stance, singling out Japan as a key partner as tensions continue to disrupt global energy markets. He drew a sharp contrast with NATO allies, criticizing what he described as insufficient support, particularly in securing shipping routes through the Strait of Hormuz.
We've had tremendous support and relationship with Japan on everything, and I believe that based on statements that were given to us yesterday, the day before yesterday, having to do with Japan, they are really stepping up to the plate. Yes, unlike NATO.
The US president defended the ongoing military campaign against Iran, claiming significant degradation of Tehran's capabilities and suggesting the operation is nearing completion. He also defended the decision to launch strikes without informing allies, arguing that secrecy was essential to the operation.
We've obliterated their Navy. We've obliterated their just about everything there is to obliterate, including leadership. Their Navy's gone, their Air Force is gone, their anti-aircraft equipment is gone. We're flying wherever we want, Pete. We have nobody even shooting at us. When we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? You know, he's asking me, do you believe in surprise? I think much more so than us. Well, I'll be going.
The meeting also touched on regional geopolitics, with Trump raising Japan's relationship with China. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi emphasized a measured approach, reaffirming Tokyo's commitment to dialogue.
Japan has been consistently open to dialogue with China, and also, second, we have been addressing our relations with China in a calm manner. And also, speaking of the US-China relationship, my sincere hope is that the relationship will be something conducive for our regional security and also ensuring the global supply chain in the world.
The meeting comes as oil prices surge and tensions in the Strait of Hormuz intensify, with Washington continuing to press allies for greater involvement while insisting it can act alone if necessary.
It's not easy.
Let's switch over to the UK, and Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu are moving to deepen their partnership following his state visit to London. A series of new agreements have been announced between the two countries. A News' Ollie Barrett reports from London.
A series of agreements signed while Bola Tinubu was in the UK for his state visit, the biggest of which is to do with ports in Lagos. It's worth about $1 billion in total. It'll see the modernisation of infrastructure at the Apapa and Tin Can Island ports in that city. It was signed by a Nigerian ministerial delegation with British counterparts here in the capital. Take you through a couple of points. At least $315 million worth of supplier contracts for British companies as part of this deal. British Steel will send 120,000 steel billets to High-Tech Nigeria and ITB Nigeria for the arrangement. The Marine Minister, Dr. Ayatollah, who was in the country for the signing, says we're laying the foundation for a new era of efficiency, transparency and competitiveness in Nigeria's port system. Also, a memorandum of understanding signed between the two countries on the further exploration of all sorts of different ways of cooperating and collaborating when it comes to trade and industry, but also a deal on immigration designed to make it easier to remove people from Nigeria who are in the UK without the legal right to remain here. That part of that is directed towards Nigeria recognising the so-called UK letters as an ID documentation. That's going to ideally make it easier from a British perspective to remove people, because if they don't have valid passports, for example, they won't now have to go through the process of securing them emergency travel documentation to remove them from the country. Joint operations between the two countries also announced on sharing information, cracking down on criminal gangs who abuse visa routes, and we're also told Nigeria will be reviewing its laws to make sure that immigration offenders receive the strongest possible punishments and sentences. Bola Tinubu and Keir Starmer holding talks at Downing Street in the British capital, and Number 10 said that they committed to deepening their long-term partnership on trade, infrastructure and sustainable growth, also agreeing, we're told by Downing Street, to work more closely together on defence and security in response to transnational crime and terrorism. Ollie Barrett in London for A News.
And staying in the UK, health officials are warning about a growing meningitis outbreak in Kent, with concerns the number of cases could rise in the coming days. The current number so far of cases sits at least 29 and is likely to rise. A News' UK correspondent Zainab Faridze reports.
A 21-year-old student at the University of Kent and a teenage pupil at a school in the town of Feversham have died in the current outbreak, as the disease continues to affect students and young people across the region. Most cases have been linked to the Club Chemistry nightclub in Canterbury. Between 5 and 7 March, Health Secretary Wes Streeting said. In response, vaccination eligibility has now been expanded. All students at affected schools and universities, along with those previously offered antibiotics, can now receive the MenB jab. More than 900 University of Kent students have already been vaccinated since yesterday, forming long queues at the university's sports centre. Health Secretary Wes Streeting, who has described the spread as unprecedented, said the government is expanding its vaccination program to more students while considering whether to broaden the general vaccination campaign. He also said the number of suspected cases is expected to rise in the coming days due to the disease's 7 to 10 day incubation period. Britain's largest pharmacy chain said it is experiencing unprecedented demand for the meningitis B vaccine, resulting in limited supplies across the country. Wes Streeting added that 20,000 additional vaccine doses will be released to the private market to ease shortages as demand surges. In a typical year, Britain sees about 350 cases, roughly 1 per day, according to government estimates. The European Centre for Disease Prevention and Control says the risk of invasive disease to the general population in Europe remains very low. Zainab Faridze, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Now we head to Latin America, and the Mexican army personnel carried out operations during the Olamani military exercise at Santa Lucia Air Force Base on Thursday. The drill is designed to train forces to respond to security threats, including emergencies involving aircraft and critical infrastructure. Authorities say the drill is part of Mexico's Kukulkan security plan for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, bringing together several agencies to prepare for threats including terrorism and organized crime. It comes in the middle of renewed cartel violence, with officials pledging tighter security ahead of the tournament. Now, Muslims around the world are marking Eid al-Fitr, the festival that brings Ramadan to a close. But this year, the celebrations come with mixed emotions as millions gather for prayers while conflict and hardship overshadow the holiday in parts of the region. Here's this report.
In Mecca, worshippers gathered at the Grand Mosque on Friday for Eid al-Fitr prayers, marking the end of Ramadan in Saudi Arabia. Across the region, in Torkham, along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border, residents observed the holiday under a fragile ceasefire. Families returned home for the first time in weeks, offering prayers in rare calm after months of violence that disrupted schools and livelihoods. In Afghanistan, residents across Nangarhar province marked the first day of Eid al-Fitr with large public gatherings and festive celebrations. In Gaza City, crowds gathered in open spaces for Eid prayers, with some expressing gratitude for the chance to come together, while others said the celebrations were overshadowed by loss and hardship.
The joy is indescribable. We have been deprived of this for 2 years. It is a big thing that today we pray in the heart of Gaza City in the open to hold Eid prayers with your family and people. This is a big thing.
In Jerusalem, access restrictions kept worshippers from the Al-Aqsa Mosque, forcing many to pray in the streets nearby. Residents said Eid felt incomplete without entering the sacred compound.
We will continue praying at the gates of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We came to pray, we didn't come to fight. We came to hold our Islamic rituals, which are our rights and the right of each Muslim.
Elsewhere, a more festive atmosphere prevailed. In Cairo and Riyadh, thousands gathered at mosques, expressing hope for peace and stability across the region. In Istanbul, iconic mosques filled before dawn as worshippers streamed in for prayers, with crowds spilling into courtyards and surrounding squares in a powerful display of unity. And in Inshaki, Azerbaijan, worshippers gathered at the historic Juma Mosque, joining Muslims across the country in marking Eid with prayers, family visits, and traditional greetings in a peaceful and festive atmosphere. From Baghdad to Central Asia, millions marked the festival of breaking the fast with communal prayers, charity, and reflection. But across parts of the Muslim world, ongoing conflicts cast a shadow over what is usually one of the most joyful days of the year.
After the break, we'll be talking about the growing tensions involving Iran and what the conflict could mean for the wider region. We'll be back after these words from our sponsors. Welcome back to A News. Now, staying with the conflict involving Iran, I'm now joined by our guest, Maurice Hirsch, Director of Initiative for Palestinian Authority, Accountability and Reform at the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. He's joining me from Tel Aviv. Welcome to the program.
Hi, good afternoon.
So my first question really, just to kick things off, is for millions of people, especially in Iran, it's a national holiday, Nowruz, and the start of the new year. But Israel has hit Tehran with airstrikes. Has the level of this aggression reached new heights, especially because of what Israel's strategy is? And does it involve destroying Tehran's population too?
Absolutely not. I think what we're talking about is that an Iranian regime a genocidal regime bent on destroying America, bent on destroying Israel. They've been causing havoc the last 50 years in the entire region, undermining every single one of the different leaderships. They sent Hezbollah to Lebanon to destroy Lebanon. They sent Hamas and they armed Hamas to destroy the Palestinian population. They sent to Yemen. In every way they've been operating in order to undermine stability. They had the chance to give up on this race for a nuclear weapon to destroy everyone, and yet they chose death and destruction. It is not Israel's policy that we are dealing with here. It's an Iranian policy of a death cult that unfortunately has allowed to get out of years and needed to be reined in. It really did destroy the entire region.
I see. Sorry, Mr. Hirsch. Sorry, your connection keeps coming in and out. But I just wanted to just pick up on one or two things. You're saying obviously this regime is, a deadly one. It's a threat. But does that mean that Israel, striking Tehran during such a national holiday was the right thing to do, considering its population is celebrating this festive season?
I think that's an interesting question to ask when you're talking about, and obviously remember the 7th of October was a Jewish holiday that the Iranian and Hamas chose in order to massacre innocent civilians. What Israel is targeting is military within Tehran. We have no war with the Iranian people. We are there to destroy the Iranian regime, and a regime of death and of malice. That's what.
And then today, reports suggest that Washington is now considering blockading Iran's Haag Island to force Tehran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. What impact do you think that could have in relation to if the US decided to take that particular route?
Well, I think again, once again, we're seeing that Iran has been given the option. There are certain rules to this war. The war could be excluding any type of blockade on the export of oil from any of the countries around the Arabian. But the Iranians are choosing positively to attack all of the ships that are going through the Straits of Hormuz. They chose to mine the Straits of Hormuz. They chose to go in a direction which will be inevitably the destruction of the Iranian economy. They cannot survive what they started, and they would do well if they took the indications that they've already been given and the additional chances that they've already been given in order to stop those practices and to allow the free movement of oil and gas through the Straits of Hormuz unimpeded by their terrorism.
Some might argue that this fight that's going on between Israel and the US is something that was brought to Iran. They didn't start it, so therefore they're just trying to defend themselves. What is your thoughts on that, especially when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, and they're using that as, until this war continues, that shipping opening will be closed, will be suspended?
So the Iranian regime has been shouting for 50 years, death to Israel. They've been spending hundreds of millions to develop a nuclear program, a nuclear weapons program dedicated to the destruction of America and of Israel. And so to say that it's Israel and America that brought this to the Iranian doorstep, I think an interesting way, the reality, but I think somewhat devoid of any real context. The Iranians chose this fight. They had every opportunity to step down, to give up on that desire to destroy Israel and America. And yet they said, no matter what, no matter the consequences, that is our drive. And that is what brought us to this conflict.
And yes, and we're now heading into the fourth week coming from tomorrow. Now, Israel continues striking targets, as you mentioned, linked to Iran. How closely is Israel aligned to US objectives in this conflict? Some say they are on different pages, maybe.
Between Israel and America, the goals are similar goals, each one obviously with their own national interests. The core of both the drive and the Israeli drive is to ensure that the Iranian regime cannot execute its plan to attack Israel and to attack America. And as they said, death to America, death to Israel. That is what the core of war is about, and that is what is being executed at the moment. There is obviously the incidental goals of the war to free the Iranian people who were just massacred by this regime. 35 to 50,000 people massacred on streets just for protesting against this despotic regime. And that obviously, if we can bring about freedom of the Iranian people, will certainly be an added bonus.
President Trump has called on NATO allies to help secure the Strait of Hormuz, but several governments appear reluctant. How do you think that affects Washington's options as it tries to prevent oil prices from rising further?
I don't think President Trump has relied on NATO for many, many years. Already in his first term, he identified NATO as something which had really past its sell-by date. NATO was developed as a response to the USSR. Since the collapse of the US, NATO's relevance has been dwindling all the way along, and the NATO countries are proving that even when they are attacked, Turkey, a NATO country, was attacked by Iran. Great Britain, a NATO country, was attacked by Iran. They still don't step up, even to defend themselves. And I think that President Trump is now calling out this paper tiger for what NATO is funded predominantly by the US, its US forces, its US machine, its US, and those countries will,
Mr. Hirsch,
very large pride, refusing to participate in their defence.
But Mr. Hirsch, just in that, in regards to NATO, Article 5 doesn't actually tell them that they have to step in. It's only for defence purposes. So technically, they're not going against the NATO rules within that.
Were they not attacked? Was Great Britain not attacked? Did the Iranians not attack the base in Cyprus? Was Turkey not attacked by the Iranians? I think that it's hard to see argument where they said, well, we weren't attacked, so we're not going to get involved. Some of them were attacked, and so they should be involved, even for their own self-defense. The others, that's the nature of the pact, that when one of the countries is attacked, everyone comes to their defense. That's really the essence of NATO. And once that breaks down, then obviously America has much less to lose than European countries for the breakdown of NATO.
Well, now in regards to that, Israel has also carried out strikes in Lebanon and tensions are rising in Syria. How broad is Israel's military engagement now across the region?
The question is, how broad is the Iranian desire to cause chaos around the region? And to answer your question, we have to really in Lebanon. Hezbollah was warned not to get involved in this conflict. We don't have a conflict with the Lebanese people. We would be happy if they would be able to free themselves from the yoke of the Ayatollahs in Tehran. But unfortunately, they've chosen a different path. Similarly, in Syria, they've chosen a different path. These are unfortunate developments, predominantly for them, because Israel has shown that it has the force, the ability to defend itself against these attacks, and we will carry.
Oh, Mr. Hirsch. Hello, Mr. Hirsch. Can you hear me? I think we've lost you, but I just want to say thank you for your contributions this evening, and I'm sure we'll speak to you again. Thank you. That was Mr. Hirsch there. Now, after the break, we'll take a look at the main developments across the region. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to A News. Now let's take a look at the stories heading across the region. The conflict in the Middle East is now raising concerns far beyond the region. In Kyrgyzstan, authorities are reviewing the security risks and monitoring the situation closely as tensions continue to escalate. A News' Fariza Kalimazerna picked up the story in Almaty.
A Security Council meeting has been held in Bishkek, chaired by President Sadr Japarov, as escalating tensions in the Middle East push regional security concerns higher on the agenda. Officials focused on national priorities, including food and energy security, and discussed additional measures to protect critical infrastructure. At the same time, Kyrgyzstan's foreign ministry says it has completed another phase of evacuations from the Middle East. The operation began after the situation worsened across several countries where around 22,000 Kyrgyz citizens were residing. Hundreds have since been evacuated on special flights, while thousands more have returned home independently. Regional analysts say the escalation is no longer just a localized conflict, but part of a broader geopolitical shift already affecting Central Asia. One of the most immediate impacts is energy. Around 20% of global oil trade passes through the Strait of Hormuz, and any disruption there drives prices higher. For Kyrgyzstan, that translates into rising fuel costs and more expensive goods. Logistics is another growing concern. Iran remains a key transit route for Central Asian countries seeking access to ports in the Persian Gulf. If the situation worsens, cargo flows may shift to alternative routes, including the Trans-Caspian corridor linking the region with Europe via the Caucasus and Turkey. In this context, experts note that major infrastructure projects such as the China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan railway could gain new momentum as countries look to secure more stable and diversified trade routes. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Georgia's relationship with the European Union is now facing one of its most serious tests. A heated debate in the European Parliament has brought these tensions into sharp focus. A News' Nini Nikolashvili picked up the story in Tbilisi.
At the European Parliament's Human Rights Subcommittee, lawmakers delivered unusually direct criticism of both the Georgian government and the European Union's handling of the situation. Member of European Parliament Nancho Sanchez-Amor said that the EU is not doing anything meaningful in response to developments in Georgia, questioning why proposed sanctions related to human rights violations have not moved forward. He pointed in particular to the lack of broader effective measures beyond existing visa restrictions on diplomatic passport holders, questioning why stronger targeted sanctions against officials have not been pursued. The debate comes after a series of developments that have strained relations between Georgia and the EU. Tensions escalated in 2024 when the ruling Georgian Dream Party pushed forward controversial legislation widely referred to as the Foreign Agents Law. Critics say that the law targets civil society and independent media by labeling organizations receiving foreign funding, a move the EU warned could undermine democratic freedoms and Georgia's EU integration path. At the same time, large-scale protests broke out in Tbilisi following the disputed 2024 parliamentary elections and the Prime Minister's announcement to pause EU accession talks until 2028. Combined with laws like the Foreign Agents Law, this sparked sustained demonstrations, with protesters accusing the government of moving away from the European path. Reports also documented disproportionate use of force by police, along with arrests and alleged mistreatment. Member of European Parliament Rasa Yuknavicene argued that these developments reflect a longer-term shift. She claimed that since coming to power in 2012, the Georgian Dream leadership has presented itself as pro-European while gradually consolidating power and weakening democratic institutions. Despite growing criticism, the EU has struggled to present a unified response. Some member states have supported stronger measures, including sanctions, while others, most notably Hungary, have blocked consensus, making collective action difficult. The Georgian Dream government has not issued fresh comments during this period, as the country is in mourning following the death of Patriarch Ilya II. However, in previous statements, the party has consistently rejected accusations of democratic backsliding, accusing the EU of biased assessments and excessive bureaucracy. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, A News.
Uzbekistan is taking its first steps toward human spaceflight. The country has announced plans to begin selecting its first astronaut, marking a significant milestone for its growing national space program. Let's take a look.
Uzbekistan is preparing to select its first astronaut through a nationwide competition, marking a major step in the country's entry into human spaceflight. According to the National Space Agency, Uzbek Cosmos, the program will be open to citizens aged between 27 and 40, with strict requirements on education, health, and physical condition. Candidates must also have knowledge of foreign languages, including English and Russian or Chinese, depending on the mission partner. The selection process will include medical screening, psychological and physical testing, followed by international training. Only 3 to 4 finalists are expected to reach the final stage, with the ultimate candidate to be approved at the national level. Training is expected to last 10 to 12 months, while the space mission itself could last 10 to 14 days. Uzbekistan is considering cooperation with major space powers, including the United States, Russia, and China, which currently operate the only active space stations. Officials say the mission will focus on scientific research in areas such as medicine, biology, and material science, while also helping to develop the country's technological and scientific potential. It is Siveli Vajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A-News.
Now to the national holiday, and Nowruz celebrations continue across Azerbaijan, with streets transformed into vibrant spaces filled with music, tradition and festivity. What began centuries ago has grown into a holiday that brings together people of different cultures and backgrounds. A-News' Narchicek Jangranguli takes us to the heart of the celebrations in Baku.
Nature and the changing of the seasons is one of humanity's oldest traditions. The arrival of spring in particular continues to be marked in many forms and under many names across the world. Well, here in Azerbaijan and in many neighboring countries, we call it Nowruz. And this time, I invite you to explore it together.
For thousands of years, people have believed that the arrival of spring is a victory over evil. After months of cold and darkness, the return of nature felt like something worth celebrating. From Central Asia to the Balkans, Zoroastrianism was the first religion to celebrate the new year, calling it Nowruz, which means new day in Persian. Over time, Nowruz became deeply rooted in people's lives and lost its religious meaning, turning into an important cultural tradition. Azerbaijan has preserved this tradition as an annual festival that celebrates its ancient roots, culture and beliefs.
Here I personally showcase my handmade crafts. These bags, created under our national brand and decorated with traditional ornaments, are designed for nuts and candies. As you can see, everything from our clothing to our hats is made by hand by me.
The best thing I love about Nowruz is throwing hats to collect sweets and cookies.
Celebrated for more than 3,000 years, this holiday is observed by over 300 million people worldwide. It predates Islam by thousands of years, which is why it belongs to everyone. It crosses borders, religions and ethnicities, something rare for a celebration that lasts more than a week. There is a wide variety of traditions within this festival, from rope walking to feats of strength, from folk dancing to singing. Everyone can find something to enjoy and cherish.
We are here for Nowruz and Ramadan Bayram, and also my wife and me, we are here for marriage anniversary.
I think it's important to celebrate spring as a way of renewing energies and especially in this moment of a little bit of tensions, to see a little bit of cheerful moments, people going out, enjoying time together and getting new energy for the new beginnings.
The light wins, the life wins, the light wins over darkness, the life wins over death. So for this reason, I guess since maybe thousands of years, people over here, over this geography, I guess including Iran, Kazakhstan and many other countries around, they celebrate this because this is the hope for the new life, for the new fruits, vegetables, for the new produce they can have from the agriculture and maybe from the animals as well.
This festival symbolizes not only the change of seasons, but also a deep spiritual renewal, aligning human life with nature's cycle of rebirth. Many elements of Nowruz reflect ancient beliefs, including reverence for fire, water, earth and wind. Among these, fire stands out as the most powerful symbol of the festival, often expressed through the lighting of bonfires. Above all, however, Nowruz is about hope. In the enduring struggle between good and evil, it ultimately celebrates the triumph of good.
Loads of festivities going on there. Well, after the break, we'll take a look at how rising tensions in the Middle East are reshaping global flight routes, with more aircraft now passing through Azerbaijan's airspace. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to A News. I'm now joined by Professor Shiraz Khan, political analyst, to discuss how the conflict in the Middle East is beginning to reshape aviation routes and regional dynamics across the South Caucasus. Now, the war in the Middle East is already reshaping air routes between Europe and Asia. What does the growing use of Azerbaijan's airspace tell us about the wider geopolitical impact of this conflict?
Well, okay, so thank you very much for inviting me, first of all, and happy Nowruz to all of you. Second is that, as we know, that the geopolitics of the world is changing every hour. And as far as the Middle East is concerned, we have Bahrain, we have Kuwait, Jordan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and UAE. Oman and other places, they all have been hit by Iran recently, and so their airspace is not really viable for all the flights to go on from. And then we have a problem, if you talk about this region, we have a problem in Pakistan and Afghanistan, which is again very critical airspace, because Pakistan has been, going in Afghanistan for quite some time. For these 3-4 days, it would not be going, but for the past week or 2 or 3, before this conflict started, before this Middle East conflict started, Pakistan has been, occupying its own space. So Afghanistan is not much of an option, because Pakistan is occupying that space as well. So what we are left with is Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan since March, beginning of this March, has become a very, very important bottleneck for all these, for all these flights coming from Europe to Asia and so on. Yes. So it's basically 100 miles or approximately 100 miles of width of that airspace, which has been used by all these flights. Moreover, it's more of a traffic. It's more of a traffic control system. It's more of a busiest thing, and it is giving Azerbaijan a very important geopolitical weight as well at the same time.
And Mr. Khan, just on that, sorry, just to interrupt just there, because we saw some pictures as well, just showing that airspace and just how big that is, especially now with the war in the Middle East with Iran, that all the flights are obviously very much close to the border of where Azerbaijan is. And I just wanted to mention that Azerbaijan sits at a key crossroads between Europe and Asia. So how does this moment reinforce the country's strategic importance in regional connectivity?
Well, first of all, Azerbaijan is the only space which can connect Europe with Asia and beyond Asia. It has its own geopolitical implications, because Azerbaijan would be controlling more of the flights. It would be connecting with the foreign offices of the different countries. It would be having a leverage on the political and diplomatic front. And a lot of Azerbaijan will be having a lot of infrastructure incentives as well at the same time, and obviously a rise in the revenue fees, because when you divert the flights to a particular zone, apart from their own fly zones, it generates more of a revenue as far as I know that. So it's more, Azerbaijan is not just connecting the world on the ground, but it has a lot of importance in the air as well.
Yes, and then how might Azerbaijan then position itself as a key actor and prominent caretaker of this route now and after the war?
Well, what Azerbaijan can do is that since Azerbaijan is, basically hosting all these flights and allowing its airspace to go through, from one destination to another destination, Azerbaijan can always align with other airlines in future as well, even after the war. And there would be more cooperation in air flights and all that, more of a revenue, more of a geopolitical importance for Azerbaijan, and a lot of infrastructure can be enhanced in that category as well. So Azerbaijan not only will be important for the ground connectivities, as it is through the middle corridor and all that, but it can play a pivotal role in the flight connections and the air connections as well.
And do you see this shift in aviation traffic as part of a broader trend where geopolitical tensions begin to reshape global transport and trade routes?
Well, I don't know, because the thing is that right now the politics is changing every hour. As I said, things are not really clear. Azerbaijan is the only route as in the region, maybe beyond the region, which is safe. And obviously, it would give a lot of leverage to Azerbaijan geopolitically and geostrategically as well. And if Azerbaijan continues to do so, and it provides a safer space for the air flights and all that, there are lots of cooperations are expected in this category for Azerbaijan as well. And obviously, there's a lot of diplomatic leverage for Azerbaijan when you talk to the different countries and their foreign offices and their foreign ministers in the longer run. So Azerbaijan, those countries who are, who had a fair connection with Azerbaijan is likely to get better and better.
Now, the war in the Middle East is already reshaping air routes between Europe and Asia. What does the growing use of Azerbaijan's airspace then tell us about the wider geopolitical impact of the conflict?
Well, right now, as I told you, that Bahrain, Kuwait, Jordan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, UAE, Oman, and all these airspaces, especially Dubai, which has been struck and which has really bad implications on its economy, on the other things. Azerbaijan is considered to be a safe place, not only on the ground but in the air as well. And I think Azerbaijan can get a lot of benefit, even in the war times and all that, from it, because because the Europe or the Middle East or the Asia does not have much of an options except for Azerbaijan at this point in time, and keeping a peace on the ground, keeping a peace in the air is very pivotal for Azerbaijan to enhance its geopolitical importance. It's more of a cooperation between the states, and obviously a sense of relying on Azerbaijan from the other countries is very important as well, and sense of confidence of the other countries.
Yes, and finally, looking ahead, could developments like this strengthen Azerbaijan's role in wider regional projects such as the Middle Corridor linking Asia and Europe?
Well, Azerbaijan is strategically located in a way that all the energy corridors are coming out of it. It's really pivotal. It's really important. The Zangezur corridor, we're looking for the Zangezur corridor, which would be the big change, the big shift of geopolitics in this part of the world, energy politics in this part of the world. And Azerbaijan has always been very important. And going forward, Azerbaijan, playing this part of it when the world was in crisis, it was more likely to have more cooperations in terms of energy, in terms of people to people, in terms of tourism, and all kinds of connections Azerbaijan is looking for. So Azerbaijan is actually introduced to the whole world as very important geostrategically, geopolitically, a very, very important country.
Well, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Thank you for joining me, Professor Khan. Sorry, we couldn't get my words out there, for your insights and for your contribution this evening. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And finally, tonight, we end with the passing of Chuck Norris, the martial arts champion and Hollywood action star who became a cultural icon. He has died at the age of 86. From martial arts arenas to film and television, his career left a lasting mark on popular culture and later inspired a generation of internet folklore, a larger-than-life reputation that will long outlive the screen. Now, that's the news for the hour. Thank you for watching, and make sure you stay tuned to A News for further updates. Take care.